Okay. Welcome, everyone. This is our first episode of Free Alchemy. It's a platform where Tesla can share his teachings and technology. I'm Nina Hendricks, and I've been channeling Tesla for 6 years. I'll start with a little background about myself for those who don't know. I had an instantaneous awakening in 1999 when I was 29, and the veil completely disappeared. I since then have been able to see energies in all living things, most importantly, the soul light, and I'm a soul communicator, but also many other guides from celestial to ancestral, all kinds of guides from every dimension and every platform, as well as the ley lines and the magnetic lines of the earth as a grid worker. So 20 years later, after my awakening in 2019, I was in Europe hosting women retreats through the stone circles in Glastonbury, channeling the energies of the land. And when we finished that tour, a very unique being appeared to me. I never felt his energy before. I was used to channeling all these female deities and guides that led us through the stone circles. But after a big channeling where thousands of women appeared from every culture, every tradition, and they were all chanting about freedom for humanity. When they disappeared and finished that channeling, it grew quiet, and I went and washed my face, and I came back out, and there was one lone spirit there. And I tuned in and I said, "Who are you?" And I heard very clearly, "I am Nikola Tesla." And I thought, this is interesting. All I knew of Nikola Tesla was the mainstream story. You know, he was an inventor that was kind of outed or disgraced by JP Morgan. So I didn't know what an inventor, an engineer would really want with me. But after channeling him for 6 years, I've come to know Tesla as a very spiritual being. In his life, he wanted free energy, not only externally, so that we didn't have to pay power companies, but he wanted to help set us free internally. When he first appeared, he materialized and he said, "I'm the ultimate guide to take you from here into free energy." And he pointed to my solar plexus and he said, "You have enough energy inside your solar plexus to light up the world, but you're all pinned within. Your Fibonacci spins are not spinning fully because they're pinned with perceptions and programs and beliefs." He said, "But you can come unpinned within and let the Fibonacci's spin freely again, and that'll help you illuminate within." So that started the journey. And then he said, "Come with me. I want to take you to a currency exchange counter." And just like when we're at an airport, we want to trade our dollars for euros or dineros. He said, "Come to this counter and give up all of your divisive dollars and dineros and trade them for universal gold." So I went to the counter with him. There was a woman behind the counter, and he said, "Reach deep into your breast pockets, your hip pockets, your pants pockets." And that was symbolic of the chakra system. And reach deep to find all the places inside that we divide. He said, "That which divides you imprisons you inside." So the divides prisons you inside. So he said, give up all of those beliefs and let them go. And he said, surrender to your soul and surrender back. And so I'm very familiar with the soul energy. He said, surrender back to your soul and tap into that gold that you hold. And he said, and let that flow. So it took a while, and I gave up my divisive patterns, thoughts, programs, beliefs. And then he said, now come through the turnstile with me. And it was like a turnstile you'd see like in a subway or at an airport. And I traded all my divisive dollars into dineros. And he said, now come through. And I came through, and the turnstile turned like a vortex of energy. And I went through, and I came out the other side, and I was in a new earth reality, and it was very garden-like at the entranceway. And I could see all these devices. I was familiar with a tachyon chamber that was like copper, four walls of copper with magnets, and I saw a crystal chamber that looked kind of like a cocoon or a tanning bed. And he said, pick which one draws you. And I picked one, and all of a sudden I was inside of this crystal cocoon. And as I was inside the crystal cocoon, he delivered a message to me that said, eventually there'll be these type of devices, divine devices, he called them, all over the world. And he said, they'll be in transformation stations. And he said, you don't have to create the transformation stations, Nina, and you don't have to create the technology because both already exist. There's yoga centers and metaphysical bookstores and retreat centers and churches that will evolve to carry this technology. And he said, you're bridging, you're arcing science and spirituality. So I went through this device and I felt it raising my frequency into more and more unity consciousness. And when I came out, I could see people in the garden contributing to building a new earth and a new frequency of unity and oneness that doesn't exist in the duality, polarity consciousness in which we reside in 3D. So he said to me, these transformation stations are already popping up and the technology is already being distributed and it'll continue. And he said, as it does, more and more people will come through the gates and they will want to exchange that which divides them for that which unites them, because that's where you're really free. When you're united with all that is, you're back to your original state of grace. You're not falling from grace into divides. And people, as the earth continues to escalate into those divisive states, the chaos that precedes growth, he said more and more people will choose to come through. And he said, so as those people come through the gates, eventually they'll all come through, give up their divisive dollars and dineros at the currency exchange counter, come through the turnstile, the vortice, and then pick a device that'll help them raise their frequency and continue to shed the old residue of what we've been through. And eventually there will be more people in the awakened state on the planet than there are that are still asleep. And he said, and the scales will tip, and the awakened consciousness will be the majority, and those still sleeping in duality will be the minority, until eventually even those who are steeped deep in duality and really benefiting through greed or control, he said the divisiveness will get old and they'll recognize that there are many more people around that are experiencing this internal freedom and liberation, this free energy. And he said, and the gatekeepers. At that time, I wasn't a big fan of Bill Gates, and he showed me Bill Gates' face and others of that caliber that kind of reinforce the divides and the divisions in this reality. And so he said, eventually, even they will come through. And whoever that is for you, it could be Trump, or it could be the royal family, or it could be the Rothschilds or the Illuminati, whoever you see as that great nemesis um, that's really dividing and harming our consciousness. He said, finally, when everyone else has gone through, the gatekeepers will come too. And he said, and when they come through to get renewed and they've given up their divisive energies, their divisive currencies, they'll come into the technology, they'll raise their frequency. And then when they come into the garden, we won't judge them or condemn them. We'll celebrate. We'll celebrate because they were the souls that loved us enough to play this game, to allow themselves to take on the darkest roles, the furthest from our natural state, so that we would have this full spectrum polarity, this full spectrum from the brightest light to the darkest dark energy, so the game could be played. And he showed me the checkered board, which I had been seeing quite often during that time. And we were rising above the checkered board, looking down, and he reminded me that if there aren't the dark squares, there's no game. It's just all light. And we like to play games as souls. We love to come here. We love to experience duality. We love to experience the way that things materialize slower here. We love to have orgasms and ice cream, and to do things with a physical body that we can't do when we're only in soul energy. So he said there's no judgment or condemnation when we get to that place. We just all celebrate that, we've played a great game. It's like a group of friends that go out and pick teams to play a sport. You might be the red team, I might be the blue team, and we might play against each other while the game is playing. but when it's done, we all take off our colored jerseys and go have fun. He said that's how souls incarnate here. You know, some might play the villain or the foe, and when the game's over, we let go of those roles. So that was his story about humanity's awakening. And he said, you know, it's got 7 decades to go that will experience that tipping of the scales and that more and more people awakening until they are the majority instead of the minority. And he said, it's like when you've gone to see a fireworks display and you get to the end and that grand finale. He said, you know, it passes so soon, the grand finale, and all the work that you're doing now and all the work that we're all doing. He said, when we get to this place where the quickening starts happening, and we can feel that in our collective consciousness now, when you get to that place where the quickening is happening and that chaos that precedes growth is intensifying, don't wish it away. Don't, don't try to resist anything. If it's happening, it's meant to be. That's number one spiritual philosophy for me, non-resistance. But he said, slow it down like a slow motion camera. Like when the rose finally burst out of the bud, it's taken so long to get from that seed in the mud through all that pressure and then to finally come out to the sun, but still have to spurt and grow and put emphasis on getting to where it can blossom and bloom. When that seed starts ripping open, which is what's happening now, we can feel it in our collective consciousness. The seed is ripping apart, and that bud, that blossom is coming out. And so many people just want to get it over with and are afraid of it. But his guidance and many of my other guides too have said, savor it. Savor it like you could slow down the grand finale of the fireworks display, or you could put a camera in slow mo on that blossom as it bursts open and blooms. So that's where we are currently. And that's Tesla's first story for me. And then he said, you don't have to do anything right now. It's all already happening. I'm already working the grid. I have this, a circuit that I worked from Florida to the Caribbean to Northern California to Asheville. I worked that circuit for many years, including Sedona and Mount Shasta in there. And he said, you're already a grid worker. You're already establishing a grid of energy. And he said, eventually, you'll see that, the technology and everything else comes into play. And that was it. He left, and I had a lot to integrate after he left, and he disappeared, and I didn't see him for another year and a half. That was in July 2nd of 2019. In October of 2020, he came back, and I was in Asheville, and we were all in upheaval and global crisis over the vax and the mask and the mandates. And I was leaving Asheville because some of my friends there were so traumatized, and I started just seeing all this festering anger inside of that based on the politics of the vaccine. So I went out for a drive, and I hadn't seen Tesla in over a year, and I was driving a scenic route from Asheville, Chattanooga, and he appeared in my car. I was kind of stunned, shocked, and I said, well, here you are. It's been over a year. And he said, well, I told you I'd be back. And he said, see all these power lines, the whole beautiful scenic river drive there was just littered with power lines. He said, they're not necessary. He said, but they are serving a purpose. And in hindsight, people will see. And he said, he gave me other tips, which we're going to do that episode next week, the divine divides and the separation vibrations. He said it all serves and there's purpose to it. So that's next week's episode. And then he disappeared again, and he came back a year later in November of 2021. And he taught me about sacred geometry, the Merkaba, and the number 13 and the number 33, which had already been woven into everything I was doing, the 33 anyway. And after that, he stayed, and he's been my guide every day since, my main guide, and it's been a wonderful journey. So episode 3, we'll talk about that. And then the following year, 2022, he told me to stop working, take all my classes, workshops, tell all my clientele that I'm going to take time off to write a book. And I really haven't started working back since. It's been 6 years. And now finally he's ready to compile all of this and to share it in a podcast. So we received Awaken Architect in 2022. We ran a pilot program, 4 of them with 13 people each, and received all the information. Then 2023, he had me put 13 Tesla tables in a grid pattern in the grid I've been working. And then 2024, he gave me 369 Alchemy. And again, we're guided to take 4 pilot programs. So many of the people in our live audience are members of those programs, participants and pilots themselves. And then 2025, today, he's given us Free Alchemy, this podcast. We did Monday night free alchemy groups for a long time. And then he's asking us to create the AVA Academy of Vibrational Awareness and Alchemy, where he can put all his teachings and technology. So it's been an amazing journey. There's one final episode, and it's called SimNav. And working with Tesla and the light team that he works with, I've come in and out of this virtual reality many times now. And I can tell you, we are living in a simulation, and each one of us is an avatar, just like you would create one in a video game. Doesn't mean that we're fake or that we're not authentic or that our lives aren't real. They very much are, and all of our emotions and everything, it's very real. But there's a bigger part of us that exists outside the matrix. And to get to know that part and to have that part supporting us while we're here, boots on the ground in 3D Earth, is a great gift. And so that kind of brings me back full circle to living from soul. When you know your soul and you know that your soul has your back and is organizing everything for you, everything for your best and highest good, whether it's a tragedy or an obstacle course, it's to strengthen you and to show you the gifts that you carry within. So if you want to learn more about me, go to nanahendricks.com, and Free Alchemy with Tesla's on there too. And we'll be placing a video a week for this first 9 weeks, and then we'll see what comes next. Thank you for tuning in and being with us. And we're going to move on to a meditation now where you can feel that currency exchange and the frequencies of the divisive dollars and dineros, which are all symbolic currencies for universal gold of our soul. That's where we'll go next. Thanks for being here.